Oh Gamora, my Gamora, I have now spent an inordinate amount of time trying to conjure an intro worthy of your majesty, and so instead I skip the cleverness and get on with the show. My name is Benji, and this is a review of the new hero pack for the most dangerous woman in the universe, bringing you the opinion on her signature 15 and how much of a nuisance her nemesis set and obligation are. And so we start as we always do with the alter ego, which I hasten to add is the first alter ego that looks equally like the hero side. Is that a portent of the awesomeness to come, that she's good enough to be two heroines for the price of one? I don't know, but suppositions aside, the fact remains that we have another identity that circumvents the natural order of deck building, and that, my internet friends, can only be a good thing. 6 of your 40 cards can be from any aspect, so as long as they have an open bracket, the word attack or thwart, and a closed bracket. Okay, so not a huge amount of space to use up, but the flexibility this will no doubt bring is nothing to be sniffed at. Not only adding more versatility than your average Marvel bear, but also allowing you greater freedom to tech in certain cards for a given scenario. As a little cherry on top, she has a once per turn action to peek at the top card of your deck and draw it if it's an attack or thwart event. I don't think you can argue with the deck building synergy these two abilities bring to the table. And if you couple it with the acceptable, if unspectacular 10 health, 3 rec and hand size of 6, we're off to a delightful start. Flipping the card does absolutely nothing to diminish the early buzz. A 2-2-2 basic power stat line means that she neither excels nor disappoints at each of them. There really is a lot to be said for this uniformity. Allowing an event-heavy deck to express the playstyle you're after can leave her basic powers available for literally anything you need on a given turn. I can't underestimate what level of freedom that gives you to make the most optimal play when turning your hero sideways. And what's more, finesse and precision just supercharge this identity card as an overall package. On their own they're not particularly impactful, but over the course of a game they can easily be the difference makers, and is what is now becoming a theme. They can support a more flexible playstyle, because if you're event attacking, you're also chip dealing with threat and vice versa. Man, this is a bloody good identity. Let's hope the rest doesn't disappoint. Her signature ally Nebula, aka Gamora's half-sister, who she has a complicated relationship with, which we'll get into later, is just sweet value. Mirroring the 2 thwart and 2 attack found on Big Sis, we've already discussed how comforting that is. Her 2 health is the only downside, but she only costs 2. And really she costs a net 1 because you can fetch an attack or thwart event when you play her as well. It really is difficult to get so hyped talking about a 2-drop ally, but here we are. If you look at this card with certain glasses on, it says 1 resource for 2 damage or threat removal, your choice, and then the next time you defend, discard this card instead, and have a lovely glorious day. Doesn't that sound pretty damn sweet? Yes. Yes, it does. Now, spoiler alert, our Gamora has a lot of 2-ofs. An acrobatic move is the first of them. So ordinarily 0 cost damage cards are about as impactful as a spud gun. But how can we forget the super synergy that can see you removing a threat at the same time you play this with her hero ability? But even when you accept that quite a few turns will see you playing a couple of attack vents, and so this might not even proc the threat removal. But when you consider its value that's still equivalent to 2 damage and let's say half a threat, you can still have no complaints. Also, this combos so well with setup turns. Where you're playing an upgrade or support card, you can play a 3-drop and this with the hand size of 5. Nothing but net. 2 copies of Cross Counter remind you that Gamora's hero abilities are once per phase, And you know you'll use this in the villain phase. So giggity, this card's inherent quality just got bumped up by about 30%. Honestly, when will the goodness end? FYI, this card is really good without the identity procs. Just consider the protection card Sidestep. Okay, not a staple by any means, but you can pay $1 just for the damage absorption and with the possibility of a chip damage. The disparity between these cards is considerable, and further evidence that these cards are really bloody good. Another dose of is Set the Pace, the mirror of acrobatic moving, all but the fact that this only removes one threat. Boo! Boo! What the duck chuck is this peasant card, FFG? Ladies and gentlemen, we have crash landed in Average Town after a run of winningness I thought would never end. But here we are, one threat for just the cost of the card itself. But, there will be more turns than there are not that you prioritise damage over threat removal. Because, Kel Surprise, that's how you win the game. So if this is a leftover card in your hand, it's an extra threat dealt with, and most likely some chip damage to boot. Still, from tiptoey threat removal to big chunks of it, with, you guessed it, 2 copies of Forward Momentum. That's a decent card, removing 3 threat for 2 resources, but 5 resources when you played an attack event is really, really strong. Obviously, you're hoping that you draw this or even hold on to it for a turn. You're in alter ego form and giving your villain the opportunity to do some big time scheming. But if you get the 5 threat and the chip damage from this, then it's almost like a soft reset of the loss conditions, with next to 0 loss in tempo. Decisive Blow is the final attack or thwart event we'll talk about, and I suppose saving the biggest till last is no bad thing. This is good value once again just on its own, with no procs off of any hero shenanigans. Granted, the 4 damage for 2 resources is a little bit underwhelming, but it's likely far too easy for you to enable the 7 damage off of this. And it's this frequency, which I wager will be high unless you've gone full aggro in your deck building, that determines the card's overall value. And that value, my friends, is on the high side of high. Oh my god, we have only 1 copy this time of Conditioning Room. The typical at this point alter ego support card that sees you healing 1 and fetching the bottommost event of the attack or thwart variety in your discard pile. This is no bad thing because, and excuse me being obvious, but A, increases your hand size in alter ego to 7, yes thank you, and B, you should only have impactful targets to bring to your hand. And a word for the designer that raised his hand in the brainstorming session though. We'll call him Chad. You see, the original plan was for this to fetch the topmost card in the bin. The team leader, who we'll call Dick, said, right, where's this card balance wise? And remember, this one was my idea. At that point, Chad, dear Chad bless him, raised his hand and the future was rewritten. Upgrade time with a singular copy of Keen Instincts. The at this point predictable give you a wild resource for certain things. This time attack or thwart events. Oh dear no, why so prohibitive? To be fair though, this is a pants card for a setup turn, so it won't actually function as pure economy each and every turn. Still, if I'm nitpicking about that fact, then I must be really desperate to have a moan up. And finally for the signature 15 is the imaginatively titled Gamora's Sword. Now, I don't actually love this card like pretty much everything else we talked about so far. It's not bad, and if you play it turn 1 it's going to provide some exceptional return on investment. I just, find it hard to monologue about it. It's good, that is all. Although I do really like that it's target neutral, meaning your event can target one enemy and this ability another. Nothing like having the choice to maximise efficiency. And so to the necessary evil cards in the box. her obligation, unfulfilled destiny, is the usual flip to alter ego and tap to deal with, and option 2 is bin 2 events from your hand. One of these days, and not today obviously, obligations are going to mix things up a bit. Still, Gamora looks sad enough for the both of us. Nemesis deck time! Sibling rivalry with its 3 pesky boost icons sees Nebula turning her back on Little Big Sis. Or did she already have her back turned and we're doing this in reverse? Anyways, this isn't an insignificant threat. A solid state 4 threat to deal with, on your own I might add, with the threat, excuse the pun, of extra encounter cards, is a devil's gambit to be sure. And when you combine it with Gamora's nemesis Nebula being drawn at the same time, it's a real case of pick your poison. Her basic stat line is actually fairly middling as far as nemesis go, but that Retaliate 2 absolutely sucks. She must be the absolute master at counterattacks to be rocking that nasty little paper cut. Now the less swings at her the better is the clear first and second option here. And I know it's thematic, but I wouldn't sweat the allied discard effect. Friendly Nebula doesn't stick around for long enough with her 2 hit points for this to be too impactful. Still, this side scheme Nemesis combo is solid. Inner Bind actually attaches to your identity for an added bit of novelty, and in so doing negates your precious precision and finesse abilities, and the card draw on the other side. Well, that kinda sucks. At least it would if the means to discard were a bit more painful. Sack an event and get pinged. Sure, whatever. Next. 2 copies of Waylay, aka our hero looking worse for wear, really does punish the ever-living bejesus out of your tempo and your ability to do absolutely anything with your identity for a turn or 2. This is a really spiteful card, but thankfully Gamora is a dual threat character, equally potent with her identity and her deck chock full of events. Now normally we call it a day at this point, having focused on just the identity related cards. We like to keep things relevant to what a hero is guaranteed to bring to the table, even in posterity. But most hero packs also have a smattering of thematically or mechanically linked new cards, and let's go through those now. 2 of these are wildly disparate aggression cards, Plan of Attack and Godslayer. The former giving you a search ability for the attack event you really feel like you need, and the unique Godslayer, which incidentally targets a unique enemies, gives you an 2 attack buff in the process. We then have the 2 sides of a coin in Clobber and Impede. Both do variations on the same thing, either deal damage or remove threat, but also bounce back to your hand if they're the first card you've played. Both are solid and emphasise with a perk this time how important sequencing in a game of Marvel Champions is. Finally, we have a couple of grey borders in Drax and Hidden Run. The former add in the soon to be released Drax as an ally, and I must say I like the value on display here, even at the cost of bypassing minions, and then the latter is of course meant to be super synergistic with Gamora, which of course it is, especially when you get full value from it. But that there concludes our look at all things that make Gamora an absolutely glorious Marvel Champions identity. She just brings so much consistency and efficiency to most everything she does. Even subpar plays can be salvaged with some superb abilities and cards at your disposal. I suspect she's going to spend a lot of time in the win column. Alas, I've been your host Benji, and this is him telling you that this video is over.